Good morning, everyone. Today's lesson is called After the 400 Years, Your Time is Up. This will be part 10. I'm going to focus on the time after the 400 years of God's captivity of his people has come to a close. Slavery started in the United States officially in 1619. 400 years later, the horror show is coming to an end. God's people are waking up just as he prophesied that they would. In Daniel chapter 12, God says that there would be a special time given to his people when he will finish their punishment. He also says that during that time, that knowledge and education will be greatly increased. This is the time of awakening. This is the time when God's people will begin to realize that they have been lied to by the nation, that they have been given a false religion called Christianity that have subjugated and enslaved them. It enslaved their mind. It took away their dignity. It took away their history. It took away their heritage, and it put them in bondage. Many are still in bondage today, but God says that this is the time of awakening. This is the time of judgment when the 400 years have run its course. So we're going to talk today. What happens after the 400 years have come to an end? Let us open up in a word of prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, we come to you in the name of Yeshua. We ask that you open up our minds and that you make our hearts receptive to the truth. Sometimes the truth is not what we have been told. We live in a world surrounded by enemies, surrounded by lies and distortions of the truth. We are surrounded by the noise of this world. We pray, Yeshua, that today you will take us to that quiet place that we might contemplate the truth, and that truth might set our minds free. That truth might make us realize who we really are, that we might regain our regalness, our dignity, and take our rightful place as your chosen, called out ones. We are that holy, called out nation. Open up our minds now that we might receive in your Son's precious name, in the name of Yeshua, the name that is above all names. Amen and amen. Let's jump. This is the last flag we bled for. We have been in this country for 400 years. Our time have been served. Deuteronomy 28:15 through 68 speaks of this terrible time for God's people. What would happen to us if we did not listen at him, if we did not follow his laws and his precept given to us as his holy, called out people? He says, I will not destroy you fully, but I will punish you. I will use the foolish Gentile nations to punish you. They will rule over you, and they will make your life miserable. They will take your place. They will take your heritage, and you will become a byword amongst the nations. You will be hated by all people because of my name's sake. They called us savages today because they believe that we came from an uncivilized civilization. They lied to us and told us that our history started with the conquest of the Anglo-Saxon over God's holy people. We ask ourselves, who are the savages? Is it us or is it them? They called us the savages. I want you to look at this next video, and then you determine who the savages really are. This next video talks about Christopher Columbus. It also speaks of the lies of history that Christopher Columbus discovered the United States. This will give you a little bit of insight of how Christianity was used and how history has been distorted and then fed to God's people in order to manipulate us and to put us in a position where we can be dominated by those that oppress us right up until this very moment. Look at this next video and you determine who the savages really are. Notice how their whitewashed Christianity and their religion was used to come in like a Trojan horse and then to destroy and subjugate the peoples that they found in the New World because they thought they were superior to them. This is the reason why God says, I am going to judge the system that they created, the system that they call Babylon the Great.
Americas on October 12th, 1492. He landed at a small island in the Bahamas and had 3 separate trips after that, repeatedly returning to the Bahamas, as well as an island later called Hispaniola, modern-day Haiti, and Dominican Republic. Suffice it to say that he had brought hell to the people who had welcomed him with open arms in the Republic when he got there. This has always been a signature, right?
Christopher Columbus, one of the great European heroes, turns up on the island of Hispaniola. He was welcomed by the native people. They embraced them, they treated them with fantastic hospitality. His soldiers snatched babies from the breasts of their mothers and dashed their heads against the rocks. Children were fed alive to his dogs. Women's breasts were cut off. He decided to hang 13 of the Native Americans in Hispaniola to recreate the crucifixion of Jesus, plus the apostles. It's true that the majority of people died there of disease. Disease is introduced by the Europeans unwittingly, but many others were driven to death through overwork, direct murder, through starvation as their resources were taken away. Columbus insisted that everybody bring him a certain amount of gold, and those who failed to do so had their hands cut off. Some were sent back to their villages with their hands and their noses tied around their necks, having been amputated by his soldiers. And what he did there set the pattern for the genocidal extermination of almost all the Native American peoples. 100 million before Columbus made landfall. By the 19th century, that had come down to less than 1 million across the Americas. Overtly endorsed by such revered figures as George Washington and Thomas Jefferson, who wrote about the necessity of wiping out Native American peoples.
Let us not veer too far away, however, from the actual subject of discourse going forward here. The point being buttressed is the people who were originally known to have discovered America are not only Africans, but are believed to have also come from Asia some 15,000 years ago, meaning that Europeans or Americans are far from it. However, contrary to popular belief, African-American history did not start with slavery in the New World. The history of African presence in America dates back thousands of years before the arrival of Christopher Columbus in 1492. Africans were not just brought to America as slaves during the transatlantic slave trade, but they had actually been living in the Americas long before European colonization. So, while we commend Christopher Columbus for sailing the seas in search of new land on Europe's behalf, it should be recalled that he was not the first to make that journey, as widely untaught evidence exists, suggesting that Africans made it to the Americas after the first Americans arrived on the continent, centuries before Columbus ever did.
As the poem goes,
So God says after the 400 years of his people's captivity and after they have been scattered throughout all nations, that he will judge the nations. He will judge the system of Anglo domination that have dominated the world and dominated and oppressed his people for over 400 years. Psalms 2 verse 1 through 9 speaks of this. God says, why are the nations so angry? Why do they waste their time with futile plans? The kings of the earth prepare for battle. The rulers plot against the Lord and against his anointed ones. Very interesting. They are plotting against God's holy called out people, his anointed ones. And this is why he is going to judge this world. This is why he is going to judge the great prostitute, the system of oppression that they have hoisted upon God's holy people. Let us break their chains, they cry, and free ourselves from slavery to God. They do not want to answer to God. They do not want to even recognize God's anointed people. But the one who rules in heaven laughs. The Lord scoffs at them. Then in anger he rebukes them, terrifying them with his fierce fury. For the Lord declares, I have placed my chosen king on the throne in Jerusalem, on my holy mountain. The kings proclaim the Lord's decree. The Lord said to me, you are my son. Today I have become a father to you. Only ask, and I will give you the nations as your inheritance, the whole earth as your possession. You will break them with a rod of iron and smash them like clay pots. So God says that I will punish the nation for what they have done to the earth, for what they have done to my holy people. I will laugh at their punishment when it comes, because they have rebelled in their own pride. They thought themselves to be more powerful than God himself. They manipulated his word for their own selfish purposes. But God says when the 400 years is over, you will see what I will do to all the nations. I will crush them like clay pot, because I am the Lord. It is very important that we understand God's timeline. It is important that we understand all of the things that are happening, the signs all around us. They're trying to tell us something. God's timeline did not start in 1948 when the European so-called Jews was given the land of Palestine. God says the land of Palestine, the Holy Land, would be occupied not by God's Israelites, his holy people, but it would be occupied by the Gentile nations right up until the second coming of Yeshua. That has not happened yet. So those that are committing genocide in the Middle East right now, posing to be the people of the living God, are not the people. God's people are still scattered around the world. Slavery started in 1619. He says, I will give them 400 years, and then after that 400 years, I will judge the systems of oppression that has been set against my people. The correct timeline is from 1619 to 2019. It is evident by what has happened since 2019. Let me just go over a few of these events so that we might understand that we are living in the beginning of the end of Babylon the Great, the worldwide system of oppression that has been set against the people of the living God. Yes, the time of Babylon the Great reign on earth is coming to a close. I'm going to show you several signs that tell us that this is God's timeline and that things will never be the same on earth again. Our earth is changing. God says of this time, he talks about it in Isaiah 51 verse 4 through verse 8. Listen to me, my people. Hear me, Israel, for my law will be proclaimed and my justice will become a light to the nations. My mercy and justice are coming soon. My salvation is on the way. My strong arm will bring justice to the nations. All distant lands will look to me and wait in hope for my powerful arm. Look up to the skies above and gaze down on the earth below, for the skies will disappear like smoke, and the earth will wear out like a piece of clothing. The people of the earth will die like flies, but my salvation lasts forever. My righteous rule will never end. Listen to me, you who know right from wrong, you who cherish my law in your heart. Do not be afraid of my people scorn, nor fear their insult. For the moth will devour them as it devours clothing. The worm will eat at them as it eats wool. But my righteousness will last forever. My salvation will continue from generation to generation. God is saying here that the earth will wear out. And this is what is happening now as the 400 years have come to an end. And he says that his judgment is coming, where human beings will die like flies. What is he talking about? Look at these next series of videos. It will give you an indication that after 400 years have come to a close, things begin to happen that we need to take note of. Things that indicate that the conclusion of the 400-year captivity of God's people has brought these calamities upon mankind, calamities that herald the beginning of the end and the beginning of God's judgment upon the system of oppression, the anglicized system of oppression that have kept God's people punished and in bondage. Take a listen.
Mysterious pneumonia outbreak in Wuhan, China.
A new type of coronavirus.
The number of affected countries has tripled.
The World Health Organization has just declared that this is a pandemic.
The city supports all essential workers who are showing up every day.
It's still March.
And the Oscar goes to Parasite.
Please sit down. Thank you.
I've never seen her before.
Hey, all you cool cats and kittens.
So, Folklore is out.
Dodgers have won it all in 2020.
The Los Angeles Lakers.
This is so much bigger than just us.
I always say talent is more important than experience. I've always said that.
Everybody right now is worried that TikTok's going to be banned in the United States.
Normal life canceled.
11 days into the national lockdown.
All public gatherings banned.
Working from home is the new reality.
Are any of y'all wearing pants? Now be honest now.
School is closed.
For the remainder of the academic year.
Guys, what happened? It kicked her off the internet.
I see Britain is holding up 2 and 2.
Lives of more than 400 million children.
Zoom after Zoom can be exhausting.
It seems like the world's caving in on you.
Yeah, work never stops.
It could be taking a toll on your well-being.
This is going to get worse before it gets better.
Italy saw its deadliest day from the coronavirus as the death toll jumped by more than 600 in 24 hours.
The plans we have is to contain
the disease outbreak in Taiwan.
We have very little problem in this country at this moment. 5
people have contracted the virus. Let us build up our confidence. We will eventually win.
Many of our countries in Europe are now acting to flatten
the curve epidemic. Used when talking about reducing the number of coronavirus cases.
Americans unemployment claims, nearly 3.3 million
More than
announced.
6 million, I hope that's right.
10 million workers now applying for unemployment.
50 million unemployment claims filed in the span of just 4 months.
A disproportionate number are black.
It's called systemic racism for a reason. There's 400 years of history here.
Now! What do we want? What do we want now?
One man's death has rekindled this movement around the world.
Frustration over the lack of charges against the officers.
They should be charged. There's always a better way.
Protesters kneeling and raising their hands in peaceful demonstration.
Is that your Bible?
State Bible. They poured onto the street. Resign, they shouted.
We want protection of our indigenous identity.
Against the killing of the youth, we want a new Nigeria where righteousness, peace, and justice reign.
They are scared.
They fear they are losing the power.
The worst fire season ever, and every year builds on the last one, it seems like.
Yeah, it really does.
This is everything we've worked for the last 35 years, gone.
This looks more like Mars.
One of the most busy hurricane seasons ever on record.
Devastation in Puerto Rico.
India and Pakistan are facing their
worst locust outbreak in 70 years.
Cases are up.
More than 30 states and Puerto Rico reporting cases on the rise.
Possible second wave.
Going global, 60 million plus cases, almost 1.5 million deaths.
I've developed mild symptoms.
French President Emmanuel Macron.
President Bolsonaro has.
Press Secretary Kayleigh McEnany.
Donald Trump
tested positive for the coronavirus.
False sense of security. I think it's under control. I'll tell you what.
How? 1,000 Americans are dying a day.
They are dying. That's true. It is what it is.
We don't have enough stretchers. We're way above capacity.
Cemeteries have become overwhelmed.
Allahu Akbar.
I think we could have been a little more preventative, as a whole, as a country.
When I'm president, we will be better prepared, respond better, and recover better.
Some lines stretching for blocks, forcing people to wait hours to cast their ballots.
It could have rained, it could have snowed. I would not care. I'm not going anywhere.
Andrzej Duda has been re-elected president of Poland.
Many Malawians already knew from early unofficial results that he would be their next president.
Tsai defeated a pro-Beijing rival. Luis Arce promised he will rule for all.
We will be a party that governs for every New Zealander.
We did it, Joe.
The flame of democracy was lit in this nation a long time ago. And we now know nothing, not even a pandemic or an abuse of power, can extinguish that flame.
I hope I aren't going to have the bloody bug now.
And press on for what is right, for what is fair, for what is just. But we will not go back. We come too far, and we're not going to give up now.
China has identified the cause of the mysterious new virus.
Coronavirus.
There are fears a rapidly spreading virus has reached Australia.
This is a rapidly emerging situation where there is not a cause for alarm.
The first US case has been detected.
There's confirmation the coronavirus has reached Australia.
China is urging its citizens not to travel abroad as it struggles to contain the virus.
We will be standing up Christmas Island as a quarantine area.
Foreign nationals coming from China are now banned from entering the country.
I have today declared that the coronavirus presents a public health emergency in the United States.
Trying to contain a city of 11 million people is new to science. It has not been tried before as a public health measure.
The death toll now has risen above that of the SARS outbreak 17 years ago.
We now have a name for the disease, COVID-19.
I was at a hospital the other night where I think there were actually a few coronavirus patients, and I shook hands with everybody.
The Italian government tonight put the entire country on lockdown.
COVID-19 can be characterized as a pandemic.
We will be suspending all travel from Europe.
From Italy this evening, it just gets worse. The death toll now worse than China.
What happened in Bondi was unacceptable.
12 years of perfect employment, it all blows up in 24 hours.
More than 3 billion people in almost 70 countries and territories have been asked to stay at home.
From this evening, I must give the British people a very simple instruction. You must stay at home.
We're asking everyone to work at home if possible, postpone unnecessary travel.
आज रात 12 बजे से संपूर्ण देश में.
So together, and with the rest of the world, we face this unprecedented challenge. For many, young and old, 2020 will be the toughest year of our lives.
We've got some breaking news to bring you, and it's to do with the Prince of Wales. He has tested positive for coronavirus.
The Prime Minister, Boris Johnson, has tested positive for coronavirus.
Countries around the world have now reported more than 1 million coronavirus cases.
Prime Minister Boris Johnson has been transferred to the intensive care unit.
The city may have to temporarily bury bodies on public land if they run out of morgue space.
Better days will return. We will be with our friends again. We will be with our families again. We will meet again.
Is monkeypox really the next global pandemic? Can you catch it just by touching someone? And is it as deadly as some people claim? Today,
the world breathed a cautious sigh of relief as the COVID-19 pandemic seemed to recede in early 2022. We had weathered the storm, albeit with heavy losses, but just as a semblance of normalcy returned, a new health threat emerged: monkeypox. Initially identified in captive monkeys in 1958, monkeypox was a disease primarily confined to Central and West Africa. Its appearance outside these regions was rare. However, in May 2022, cases began to surface in multiple countries, sparking global concern. The outbreak was unusual, spreading rapidly through human-to-human transmission. The virus's resurgence served as a stark reminder: infectious diseases know no borders and can emerge unexpectedly. The world watched with bated breath, haunted by the recent memory of COVID-19's devastation. Would this be another pandemic? Monkeypox is a viral zoonotic disease, meaning it can spread from animals to humans. It belongs to the same family of viruses as smallpox, a disease eradicated in 1980. While monkeypox is less deadly than smallpox, it still poses a significant health risk. The virus is believed to be primarily spread through contact with infected animals, such as rodents and primates. Human-to-human transmission occurs through close contact with bodily fluids, lesions, or contaminated materials like bedding. Monkeypox has been endemic in parts of Central and West Africa for decades. However, the 2022 outbreak marked the first time sustained chains of transmission were observed outside these regions. This unusual spread raised concerns about mutations in the virus and a potential increase in transmissibility. Monkeypox typically presents with flu-like symptoms: fever, headache, muscle aches, and fatigue. These symptoms are often followed by a distinctive rash that progresses through various stages. The rash typically appears on the face and spreads to other parts of the body. The lesions start as flat red spots and develop into raised bumps filled with fluid. These bumps then crust over and scab before eventually falling off. The entire process can take several weeks. While monkeypox is rarely fatal, it can lead to complications, especially in young children, pregnant women, and individuals with weakened immune systems. Prompt diagnosis and supportive care are crucial for managing the disease and preventing severe outcomes. Section 4. A global challenge. The 2022 monkeypox outbreak spread rapidly, reaching multiple continents within weeks. Europe, North America, and South America reported a surge in cases, with major cities becoming epicenters of transmission. The outbreak disproportionately affected men who have sex with men, highlighting the importance of targeted public health interventions and addressing health disparities. However, it's crucial to remember that anyone can contract monkeypox through close contact with an infected individual. The global response to the outbreak was swift, drawing on lessons learned from the COVID-19 pandemic. Countries implemented surveillance systems, contact tracing measures, and isolation protocols to contain the spread.
Know about the deadly Marburg virus. What you need to know about the deadly Marburg virus. The Marburg virus is a dangerous pathogen you might not have heard much about, but it's one of the deadliest viruses in the world. With no approved vaccines or treatments, this virus belongs to the same family as Ebola, and it's a serious threat to both humans and primates. Let's break down what the Marburg virus is, how it spreads, and why it's considered such a high-level threat. What is the Marburg virus? The Marburg virus, or MARV, is a hemorrhagic fever virus, part of the Filoviridae family, which also includes Ebola. This virus causes Marburg virus disease, leading to severe bleeding, hemorrhaging, high fevers, and multiple organ failure. According to the World Health Organization, WHO, it's rated as a risk group 4 pathogen, meaning it requires the highest level of containment for study due to how dangerous it is. History of the virus. The Marburg virus was first discovered in 1967 when there were outbreaks in 2 German cities, Marburg and Frankfurt, and in Belgrade, Yugoslavia. It all started when laboratory workers were exposed to tissues from infected African green monkeys. During those initial outbreaks, 31 people were infected, and 7 tragically lost their lives. This event put the Marburg virus on the map as a serious global health concern. How is it transmitted? The Marburg virus can be transmitted through contact with the body fluids of an infected person, either through unprotected sex or via broken skin. It can also be spread from animals, particularly from fruit bats, which are considered the primary carriers. Just like Ebola, Marburg's symptoms include fever, severe bleeding, and organ failure, making it an extremely dangerous illness that needs immediate medical attention. No vaccines or treatments yet at present. There are no approved vaccines or specific antiviral treatments available for the Marburg virus. However, early professional care, especially addressing symptoms like dehydration, can improve the chances of survival. Medical researchers have been working on vaccines, and clinical trials for a vaccine covering both Marburg and Ebola began in Uganda back in 2009. Why is it a top-level threat? Organizations like the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases and the Centers for Disease Control, CDC, in the U.S., rank Marburg as a Category A priority pathogen. It's also listed as a potential bioterrorism agent due to how easily it spreads and how deadly it is. Global health authorities keep a close watch on outbreaks to prevent wider spread. The Marburg virus is a serious threat, but with more research and awareness, there's hope that vaccines and treatments will be developed in the future. If you want to learn more about dangerous viruses like Marburg and how they can impact global health, be sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell for updates. Let's keep the conversation going. Drop your thoughts in the comments.
Since 2019, things in our world have been changing. God is giving us a message that many people are not understanding or listening to. My wife and I went out to a dinner. We sat at the table with a former airline pilot. He piloted the large passenger jetliners. He says that the atmosphere have changed. There are patches of atmosphere that do not contain the aerodynamic characteristic necessary to support a heavier than air airliner. There are these voids all over the atmosphere that has never been there. He says he resigned from flying because of these new dangers in our atmosphere. I was very, very surprised to hear that, but I have noticed that there has been a lot of reported incidences of airlines going through clear air turbulence, a new phenomena in our atmosphere. I remember not too long ago hearing about a airplane that just fell out of the sky with no explanation. It was a jetliner, and it hit one of these pockets, these areas they call clear air turbulence, and the plane lost altitude and just fell from the sky. These are new signs that begin in 2019. God says when you see these things beginning to happen, you need to pay attention. Putting all of these things together tells us that we are in the timeline where the beginning of the end of the world system of Anglo domination is coming to an end, just as God prophesied that it would happen. The devil tried to deceive us and fool us into thinking that the European so-called Jews coming back to their land in 1948 was the fulfillment of the return of God's people back to the Holy Lands, which would mark the beginning of the end. Notice nothing happened when they went back. Nothing really changed. But the real timeline is God's holy people. He says, after the 400-year captivity, I will judge their captors. I will judge their enemies. I will judge those that persecuted them, those that enslaved them, those that slaughtered them, those that oppressed them. I will punish the nations for what they have done. This is just one additional bit of information that helps us to know where we are on God's timeline. Listen at this next video. It will give you an idea of what people go through when they hit some of these turbulent pockets that are new, clear air turbulent. Take a look.
On October 25th of 2019, Frontier Flight 226 from Denver to Baltimore went through one of the most intense turbulence patches you'll ever see. One man recorded the entire ordeal as his fellow passengers prayed for safety. According to the National Weather Service, turbulence is among Mother Nature's most unpredictable phenomena. Turbulence can impact your flight in several ways, but the four main types are clear air, thermal, mechanical, and wake. It all concerns jet streams, the invisible air paths encircling the globe. They can make the plane pitch up or down and rock from side to side. Thankfully, ATC can predict turbulence from weather and mountain ranges, thus accounting for thermal and mechanical. As for wake turbulence, it only matters when landing behind another plane. Clear air turbulence causes everyone trouble. That's because you'll never see it coming until you're in it, which is likely what happened on this flight. As our pilot in this video states, they went through an unforecasted area of severe turbulence. Thankfully, everything was okay, and the plane landed safely in Baltimore. On March 1st of 2023, a powerful turbulence patch nearly took out Lufthansa Flight 469 from Austin, Texas to Frankfurt, Germany. Even the pilot, who had been flying for 27 years, had never seen anything like it. They were about 90 minutes into a 10-hour flight when the plane began shaking over Tennessee. The Airbus A330 was cruising at 37,000 feet when it suddenly plummeted 4,000 feet toward the ground. Everything inside the plane went flying, from pillows and bags to food trays, water bottles, and those without seat belts. Aftermath footage shows what the plane looked like as passengers sat in silent disbelief.
I think we were falling for a little bit. Estábamos todos comiendo. Llevamos, no sé, hora y media, pero probablemente en el vuelo se empezó a caer el avión.
Aus Sicherheitsgründen lassen wir die Anschnallzeichen noch so lange eingeschaltet, bis wir die Gewitterzone verlassen haben.
According to reports, people were calling their loved ones as if it were the last time. Flight attendants treated those with minor injuries as the captain walked the cabin to check on his passengers. He tried to explain what happened as best as he could. He had been flying for 27 years and had never seen anything like that. He finally landed the plane in Virginia, where 7 people were taken to a local hospital with minor injuries. According to
Look at this next video. It shows the plane that hit one of these pockets and it lost its aerodynamic qualities because this patch did not have any. This is a new phenomena, and the plane just simply fell from the sky and crashed. Take a look at the video and footage of that crash. God says another sign of the end would be that people will be without natural affection. It says that children will rise up to cause the death of their parent. They will also be disobedient to their parent. Look at this next video. This underscores this prophecy that God have said would characterize the end time. This is yet another new phenomena that heralds the end times, that lets us know that we are in a unique time. Now that the 400 years are over, we're beginning to see all of these things come to pass. Take a look at this next video. This is an example of what the Bible is talking about. Here is an individual that is cooking something in a pot. Listen at the video. It will tell you what's inside of the pot on the stove. Take a look.
Y'all, I cannot wait to tell y'all about this story right here. This man is really sick in his head, okay? Yeah, and I know you're wondering, like, oh, why is it a pot beside his picture? You're not gonna believe. This man dismembered his own parents. Stabbed them, dismembered them, and had his mother's head boiling in that pot right there when the police came to the house. Literally, her head had been boiling for a little over a day, they said. He literally cut his mother's head off and put it in a pot to boil it. And when y'all find out the reason why he did all this, stay tuned for part 2, okay? This is gonna be crazy.
Were you guys aware that this was also happening in Mexico around the same time that Hurricane Helene hit North Carolina? Y'all see what happened in Mexico? Why is it only people are talking about North Carolina? Look at that, y'all. Water just everywhere. Dirty, murky, muddy water everywhere. The whole town is literally flooded with water. This is Acapulco, Mexico. Look at that, y'all. Look at that. So apparently there was a storm off the coast of Acapulco over here, and that's all it was supposed to be, y'all. But as soon as it touched down, it literally jumped to a Category 3 hurricane. I didn't even know about this. Look at this, y'all. Mexico experienced about 9 feet of water. Look at this, y'all. Everybody's talking about the North Carolina, but nobody knows what's going on in Mexico. Look at this. In certain parts of Mexico, the water is up to your shoulders. And the crazy thing is, Mexico almost got hit again, but now Milton is literally doing a U-turn and coming to the East Coast. Look at that. See, they gotta hold on to things. That's how deep the water is. Did y'all know about this in Mexico? Bro, you see? Look at this, y'all. Cars are literally buried. This is literally the mud flood. This is, again, the mud flood. That's what I'm saying, man. I had no idea this was going on in Mexico because everybody is talking about Hurricane Helene in the United States. But yeah, man, Mexico got it bad, y'all. Wow. Look at that. Still going, y'all.
Yes, there has been strange weather all over the world. Look at this next video. It shows a snowstorm in Australia. This is very, very strange for a snowstorm to happen in Australia. God says in Deuteronomy 32:22, "For a fire is kindled in my anger, and shall burn to the lowest hell. It shall consume the earth with her increase, and set on fire," listen at this, "and set on fire the foundations of the mountains." God is telling us what he's going to do in the last days. This is his timeline. This is why all of these things are happening, because the 400 years have come to an end, to a close. We need to pay attention to what time it is. The time of sorrows is here, and it will continue to increase in intensity as birth pains come upon a woman. They get more and more and more intense as time goes on until the main event takes place. Take a listen. Hurricane Helene hit Florida and some of the southern states, causing destruction and disaster everywhere. Then just 2 weeks later, Hurricane Milton hits the same area. God is warning us that we are in the times of sorrows. We are at the beginning only of the times of distress, because the 400 years have come to an end. Yes, the beginning of sorrows have indeed arrived. God says he will punish the nations for what they have done to his people.
Incredible hurricane. It has dropped 50 millibars in 10 hours. I apologize. This is just horrific. Maximum sustained winds are 160 miles per hour, and it is just gaining strength in the Gulf of Mexico, where you can imagine the winds. I mean, the seas are just so incredibly hot, record hot, as you might imagine. You know what's driving that. I don't need to tell you. Global warming, climate change, leading to this and becoming an increasing threat for the Yucatan, including Mérida and Progreso and other areas there.
Here is another sign. The Sahara Desert have flooded. Listen at this news clip. These strange phenomena is happening all over the world.
In the Sahara Desert, one of the driest places on Earth, has flooded. Torrential rainfall in southeastern Morocco swamped the desert for the first time in half a century. Last month, the area received more than a year's worth of rain in just 2 days.
Here is yet another sign that God says will take place after the 400 years are over. 2 Timothy 3:1-2 says that people would be lovers of money. They will do anything for money. Notice a lot of the TV shows you have, like Survivor and other programs like that, where people will simply do anything for money. Look at this next video. This shows an individual that is doing something that's very repulsive just to get money, because today's individuals are driven by the love of money and pleasure more than wanting to have a relationship with the truth, a relationship with Yeshua. This is yet another sign that we are at the beginning of sorrows. Take a listen and a look.
Living with 100,000 cockroaches and earning $10,000 for each day you stay. This was the challenge Akun accepted. At first he was confident, but as more cockroaches were added to the room, his resolve began to falter. The cockroaches infiltrated every corner, even creeping into the mattress and blankets, forcing Akun to abandon the bed. He found a temporary refuge by converting the sofa into a fortress, lifting it off the floor to reduce contact with the cockroaches. Despite his efforts, the situation only grew worse. By noon, the producers brought Akun a meal, and after cautiously inspecting it for cockroaches, he ate, impressed by his own adaptability. The producers also gave him a cockroach-repellent pen, claiming it would keep the insects away, but it failed miserably, and the cockroaches crossed the line he drew without hesitation. As the day progressed, Akun tried to distract himself by reading and playing games. At dinner, however, he found cockroaches inside the meal box, but fortunately the food remained protected. Akun disinfected it and continued his meal, followed by a relaxing cup of tea. Later, the producers announced a task. Akun had to find a specific cockroach with a number on its belly. Though reluctant, he began his search and eventually succeeded, earning a head.
Yeshua gave us another prophecy concerning his people. He says that his people would be hated by all nations. Matthew 24:9-14 talks about the beginning of God's people's sorrows because they would not adhere to his law and to his precept. Also, they did not recognize Yeshua when he came. Verse 9, then you will be arrested, persecuted, and killed. You will be hated all over the world because you are my followers. This has been literally fulfilled. Verse 10, and many will turn away from me and betray and hate each other. And many false prophets will appear and will deceive many people, like Christianity. Verse 12, sin will be rampant everywhere, and the love of many will grow cold. But the one who endures to the end will be saved. And the good news about the kingdom will be preached throughout the whole world, so that all nations will hear it, and then the end will come. Deuteronomy 28:36-37. The Lord will exile you. Now he's talking about what he's going to do to his people because they did not recognize the hour of their visitation, nor would they follow him in the land. The Lord will exile you and your king to a nation unknown to you and your ancestors. There in exile, you will worship gods of wood and stone. You will become an object of horror, ridicule, and mock among all the nations to which the Lord sends you. So he's talking about the fact that we're going to be hated all over the world. We're going to be hated in all the countries that we've been scattered to. Even those that we visit, we will be hated and we will be ridiculed. Look at this next video. It will give you an idea of the fulfillment of this prophecy, letting us know that we are indeed at the pinnacle of the time of sorrow.
Traveling the world is an exciting adventure, but for Black travelers, certain destinations can pose unexpected challenges. Whether it's cultural biases, racial profiling, or even safety concerns, there are places where Black people may not feel entirely welcome. In 2024/2025, these issues remain prevalent in some countries, creating unique travel experiences that aren't always positive. Curious to know which destinations you might want to avoid? We've compiled a list of 10 countries where Black people are not welcomed, shedding light on the real stories behind the headlines. Before booking your next trip, explore the uncomfortable truths that could impact your journey. 10. Russia. Russia, with its rich cultural heritage and vast landscapes, is an alluring destination. However, for Black travelers, the experience can be far less pleasant. Although Moscow and St. Petersburg are increasingly cosmopolitan, the country still grapples with racism, particularly in smaller towns. Incidents of racial slurs, harassment, and even violence are sadly common. According to a 2023 report by Asova Center, a Russian human rights organization, there were over 60 racially motivated attacks across Russia that year, a number disproportionately affecting Black individuals. While the majority of Russian people may be warm and welcoming, systemic issues remain, making it a country where Black visitors often feel unsafe. Recent efforts by Russia to tackle racism through public awareness campaigns have had limited success, but the shadow of discrimination still looms, particularly for those with darker skin. China. As China continues its rise as a global superpower, millions of tourists flock to experience its vast history and modern marvels. Yet, for Black travelers, the experience can be challenging. Despite China's economic advancements, racial biases remain deeply ingrained. During the COVID-19 pandemic, Guangzhou, home to one of China's largest African communities, saw a wave of discriminatory treatment, with many Black residents evicted from their homes or denied services. A 2024 report showed that 50% of African expatriates in China reported experiencing racial discrimination, primarily in the form of being refused entry into restaurants or shops. Cultural misunderstandings and a lack of exposure to diversity contribute to this problem. While metropolitan areas like Beijing and Shanghai are more accustomed to foreigners, Black travelers still report feeling marginalized. Unfortunately, these experiences have made China a difficult destination for some. 8. Italy. Italy, with its world-famous art, culture, and cuisine, draws millions of tourists each year. However, for Black visitors, the dream of visiting Italy can sometimes turn into a nightmare. Despite being a top tourist destination, racial tensions have escalated in recent years. According to a 2022 report from the Italian National Institute of Statistics, racially motivated crimes increased by 35%, with Black individuals being one of the main targets. While cities like Rome, Venice, and Florence are generally welcoming, incidents of racial slurs or even physical attacks can occur, especially in southern regions where xenophobia tends to be more pronounced. Additionally, African immigrants often face severe prejudice, which further fuels negative stereotypes. Although Italy's government has made efforts to combat racism through laws and initiatives, change has been slow, and the perception of Black visitors remains complicated. 7. Greece. Greece, known for its stunning islands and ancient history, is celebrated for its hospitality. Yet, for Black visitors, that hospitality can sometimes be marred by racism, particularly outside the main tourist hubs. The country's ongoing migration crisis has only heightened racial tensions, with African migrants often at the receiving end of hostility. A 2023 survey by the European Union Agency for Fundamental Rights found that 48% of Black people in Greece had experienced racial discrimination, primarily in public spaces and the workplace. Although tourists may not experience overt hostility, Black travelers have reported feeling uncomfortable due to stares, racial profiling, and occasional harassment. Greece's smaller towns, in particular, are less diverse and less accustomed to visitors of African descent. While the nation has made strides in addressing these issues, it remains a country where Black travelers might face challenges beyond the usual tourist experience. 6. Ukraine. In recent years, Ukraine has been thrust into the global spotlight due to its war with Russia. Yet even before the conflict, Ukraine had a reputation for being unwelcoming to Black people. In 2022, as the war escalated, numerous African students reported being denied entry into buses or trains, with border guards prioritizing white Ukrainians. This sparked international outrage and highlighted the country's ongoing struggle with racial issues. According to the Global Tolerance Index, Ukraine ranks among the lowest in Europe for racial tolerance. Although the war has made travel to Ukraine almost impossible for tourists, the legacy of these incidents continues to resonate. For Black individuals who had studied or worked in Ukraine, the experience of systemic racism has left lasting scars. Despite this, Ukraine remains a complex country, caught between the need for international support and its internal challenges with diversity. 5. Israel. Israel is a country steeped in history, but it's also one with significant racial and ethnic tensions, particularly when it comes to African immigrants. Black people, especially from African countries like Eritrea and Sudan, face severe discrimination. A 2023 report from the Anti-Defamation League revealed a 30% increase in racial incidents targeting African immigrants in Israel. In Tel Aviv, where many African asylum seekers reside, protests have erupted, sometimes turning violent, with demonstrators demanding the deportation of African migrants. The Israeli government has adopted policies that have made it difficult for Africans to settle, referring to many as infiltrators. While Black tourists visiting religious sites in Israel may not experience the same level of hostility, the plight of African immigrants highlights the challenges Black individuals face in the country. For visitors, it's important to be aware of these racial dynamics when traveling to Israel. 4. South Korea. South Korea is renowned for its technology, pop culture, and rich history, attracting millions of tourists annually. However, it remains a highly homogeneous society where foreigners, particularly Black people, can feel out of place. A 2023 survey by the Seoul National University found that 55% of Black expatriates reported facing some form of racial discrimination during their time in South Korea. Incidents range from subtle microaggressions, such as stares and avoidance, to more overt acts of racism, including being denied service in certain establishments. South Korean media has also been criticized for perpetuating negative stereotypes about Black people. While younger generations are becoming more exposed to global diversity through music and fashion, deep-rooted biases still exist. For Black travelers, South Korea can be both fascinating and frustrating, offering a unique cultural experience but also presenting challenges in terms of racial acceptance. 3. India. India is a land of contrasts, rich in culture, diversity, and history. Yet it is also a country where colorism and racism can be pervasive. Black people visiting India often face uncomfortable stares, offensive comments, and in some cases outright discrimination. In 2023, a Nigerian student was brutally attacked in New Delhi, highlighting the ongoing tensions between Africans and local residents. A survey by India Today found that 62% of Black expatriates had experienced some form of racial discrimination during their stay. This issue stems from a long-standing preference for lighter skin, deeply rooted in Indian society. Colorism affects not just foreigners but also India's own darker-skinned citizens. While India's hospitality and cultural richness make it a popular destination, Black travelers need to be prepared for the challenges they may face, particularly in less urbanized areas where diversity is less common. 2. Japan. Japan, often praised for its politeness and safety, presents a different kind of challenge for Black travelers. While overt acts of racism are rare, Black visitors often feel excluded in more subtle ways. A 2022 study by the Japan Times revealed that 45% of Black expatriates had experienced some form of racial bias, from being stared at to being ignored in social settings. This exclusion is more pronounced in smaller towns, where foreign visitors are less common. In larger cities like Tokyo and Osaka, the experience can be more welcoming, though racial profiling by police remains a concern. Japan's media has also been criticized for perpetuating negative stereotypes of Black people, particularly in advertisements and entertainment. For Black travelers, Japan can be a beautiful and enriching destination, but navigating the social landscape requires patience and an understanding of the country's deeply homogeneous culture. 1. Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia, a land of strict traditions and immense wealth, employs millions of foreign workers, many of whom come from African countries. However, the treatment of Black people, particularly those in the migrant labor force, has been widely criticized. A 2023 report by Human Rights Watch revealed that 70% of all labor disputes in Saudi Arabia involved Black workers, many of whom reported cases of abuse and mistreatment. In addition to labor issues, Black tourists may face cultural barriers that make travel uncomfortable. While the holy cities of Mecca and Medina are welcoming to pilgrims of all races, other regions can be more difficult to navigate due to cultural norms that limit personal freedoms. Despite its modernization efforts, Saudi Arabia remains a challenging destination for Black travelers, particularly for those unfamiliar with the kingdom's strict.
Let me close with this. Slavery destroyed us. Religion divided us. And I'm speaking of false Christianity, not the way, because the way is not a religion. It is a relationship with our Creator and with our Savior, Yeshua. Ignorance controls us. Truth scares us. That is the plight of God's people today. The truth should be embraced. It should not scare us. Our colonizers have gotten us used to certain things, but this is not the will of the living God. Black people must begin to self-educate. Those that oppress us will never tell us the truth. They will always endeavor to educate our children, blinding their minds to the truth of their true identity, to the truth of their true history, their true relationship with their God, Yeshua. There is a difference in knowing what you know and knowing what you were told. Think about that.